Hey, Mike.
Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
Hey, everybody. It's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another awesome episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. This week's guest is no exception to that. We'll get to him in just a minute. But before we get there, I just want to remind everybody I'm about 3 months and 20 days away from launching over to Nepal to take on Mount Everest. Supposed to be there last year. The world blew up, COVID hit, and now everything got pushed out to 2021. So I continue to train like an animal. You can find me at www.markpattisonnfl.com. And I will have a blog. There will be a Garmin link where you can see me going up and down the mountain. And it's going to be just a phenomenal experience all the way around. And I really look forward to attacking that challenge. Also, we have a campaign on there called the Millions Everest, the Lhotse Challenge. The goal was to raise $27,940, which is the height of Lhotse, which I will also be taking on. This is in tribute to my daughter who has epilepsy, Amelia. We put the challenge out there and we actually raised over $31,000, but the campaign continues to go. It will continue to go until we get into and past Mount Everest, which is in the spring of 2021. If you want to go to my site again, www.markpattisonnfl.com, and you can hit the philanthropy page. You will see Millions Everest, everything we're doing, and a donate button there. All proceeds go to Higher Ground. Higher Ground is an amazing organization working with people, mostly military people, with cognitive issues and adaptive programs where they've had issues with their legs or arms or something, working as part of the service of America, of course, over in Iraq, Afghanistan, other places around the world. So just a wonderful organization that's come to help people like my daughter and others get better. So that is the end goal. So on that note, I want to bring in today's guest, Michael Schauch. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I really appreciate the reach out. Somehow or another, we got connected, and most of the time, I got to be straight up with you that when folks reach out to me, and I get a lot of people that have written a book and they want to be out on the book tour, and it's just one of those things I generally don't, because I want this to be an authentic conversation, and it just seemed like, you know, the name of your book called The Story of Karma, it just resonated so much with me. I looked kind of more into that, and it just hit like there's so much more to the story than just you out trying to peddle a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've been a successful entrepreneur as a young kid. You were in the financial world, and then something shifted. And I think the thing that also uncommon, I'm looking at you on screen right now, and it looks like you've got someplace in the Himalaya sitting behind you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but something happened when you took a journey. You went on that part of the world, and some amazing things transpired. So why don't you tell us kind of your backstory and kind of how this whole thing came together?
For sure. Yeah, no, I had since I was about 15, I had wanted to go to Nepal. I don't know what it is about Nepal, but it's just the people, the culture, the mountains, of course. Something just drew me, connected with me right in my heart. And so I've always had this desire to go there. But I remember when I was actually, 15, my sister gave me this Lonely Planet book. And I just remember, and it was all about trekking in the Himalaya. And I remember getting it for Christmas and just sort of tearing through the pages, and I couldn't even read anything. I was going through it so fast. And all I could think about was just running out of the house in my pajamas and this Lonely Planet book and just going to Nepal at once. But, you know, years went by. You know how it is. Sometimes you don't have the funding or the money, and then you're working on your career, and then you don't necessarily have the time. So it wasn't until I was in my early 30s before I finally got to the Himalaya, got to Nepal. And part of the other thing too was I never really knew what I wanted to do there. You know, did I want to go climb a mountain? Which mountain? Did I want to go to, you know, the Annapurna circuit? But, you know, one of the things that I really felt strongly about was just to go somewhere, you know, have an experience off the beaten path, right? And Nepal to me was this kind of mystical, magical place. I mean, maybe I was over romantic about it, but but that's just kind of the feeling I had. And so I wanted to kind of, honor that. And so one day we were sitting down, this is in 2011, and we were sitting down with a gentleman who had just gotten back. He'd been trekking through the Himalaya for 2 decades. And he was telling me about this one little valley called the Lost Valley of Narfu. And this valley had just been opened up a few years before that. Prior to that, it had been closed off for generations. So the people have been living much the same way for the last 800 years. And he was just showing me his pictures, and I thought, this is it. This is amazing. This is where I'm going to go. And my wife and I, we were there sitting there together, and it was just kind of a decision made in itself. And he also explained to us how now that the valley had been opened, it was going to be experiencing some unprecedented change, social change, cultural change. It had been undergoing some environmental change as well with the glaciers melting and that sort of thing. So we thought, okay, why don't we put a little team together? And we'll put a team together of artists. We had a photographer, a nature artist, like a painter, and a musician. And then Chantal and I would do some filming. And we thought, let's just capture a moment in time. Let's go in there. Let's learn and observe from the people. And then we'll just capture a moment before it changes too much with this modern world kind of encroaching. And then I came across this picture that he had, this pyramid mountain. It was just the most striking mountain I had ever seen. And you being, into mountain climbing, I mean, you'll get this, and maybe many other people will get this as well. But some mountains, I just see it and it just connects with me right away. I don't know what it is. It's just some mountains just do that to me, and I just feel like, okay, I have to go in and try and climb this. And I didn't know where this mountain was in the valley. I didn't know if it had a name, if it had even been climbed before. But I thought, if there's one thing I was sure of, I'm going to go find this. And so we went in there. We had, we went into this valley. We had just a beautiful experience. I mean, this valley, going in there, it was like stepping back into the 17th century. The people there, they were just so genuine and so connected to their ancestral roots and again, their traditional ways. And there's no electricity out there. This is, to get to the valley, it's about a week trek, and you branch off the Annapurna circuit. So you get into this remote place, and suddenly you just realize you're in this totally different world. And it's also considered what the Tibetans call a bayul, which is considered a sacred valley, where the physical and spiritual realms come closer together and connect closer together. And you could definitely feel that there.
So let me ask you this question. I want to go back just a little bit, and I want to pick up the story where you are, but there's so much great content here. I just want to define some of these different things. So number one, when you referred to they had closed this part of, was it Nepal or was it Tibet?
So it was Nepal, predominantly because of the political reasons. They considered it, first of all, they didn't have the infrastructure to get in there. I mean, there's no tea houses, there's no, so there's no electricity, there's very dangerous mountain passes and that sort of thing. So I think part of it was a safety reason, but also the Annapurna circuit itself, which is one of the most touristy, treks in Nepal. I think that was only opened in I want to say the 70s or something, because there were a lot of Tibetan refugees who came across the border when China came in there. And so there were the Khampa warriors, these sort of warriors on horseback, were doing raids into Tibet. And so that was just, they were occupying those valleys and those areas as well. So I think there was a safety reason, there were political reasons. And Nepal, I guess it's been systematically opening itself over time. So every few years, another valley, another area kind of gets opened. And so it just so happened that this area was just opened at that time.
Okay, great explanation. Number two, you said when these decisions were going down, you're talking about we, and we, I believe, is your wife, and your wife's name is Chantal.
That's right. Yeah, Chantal and I. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question before we continue with the story is, when like go into a little bit more detail about when you're talking about, okay, so they open this thing up, and you're just like being back in the 17th century, like how there's not, and I've been to a couple places like this. I was in Africa, which we built a well for the people of the Maasai tribe down the Serengeti, and it blew my mind that goats are considered their currency, and that's how they trade, and there's no actual dollars that they're giving back and forth for goods and services. And when you're talking about no electricity, you're talking about on the where they sleep, it's all dirt and these stick huts, and for us to go in there and provide water was just like an amazing thing to see, and their reaction and their gratefulness too,
Mm-hmm.
about every little thing that we would take for granted really resonated. And so for you, let's transform you back, years ago, and now you're going into this place that they really haven't seen that many foreigners, and they're still doing the existing infrastructure isn't there. What was
Mm-hmm.
that like?
Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. I mean, you have to imagine that these villages, there's two villages, the villages of Nar and Phu in this valley. And you have to imagine that these villages are at 14,000 feet in elevation. So 14, so you're from Seattle, Mount Rainier. That's
14.5.
like
Yeah.
14, exactly. Yeah. So imagine trying to live at the summit of Mount Rainier.
Well,
I mean,
I need to imagine this because on with my Everest, I'll be coming from the south side. I'll be living at 17,500 feet for 2 months.
right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
So it's very harsh environment. Out there they're cut off because of these high mountains, and hard to grow anything. They have limited resources. Their houses are made of stone and clay. They're self-sufficient. They grow everything themselves. Their clothes they make from their own animals, the yaks, the goats and sheep, and they're semi-nomadic. They have to move with the seasons because it gets too cold in the winters. And you have these high mountain passes. So parts of the year in the winter, they can't even travel because they're shut off with the conditions. So it's a totally different way. And then, imagine in combination with that, they don't really have, at that time, it's changing now, but at that time, they didn't really have a lot of communication with the outside world. So in this village, it's not like there were books, there wasn't a library, they didn't have any information. All the information they would get is from either trekkers coming through with their phones, or maybe the odd person who went traveling and came back. They had scriptures in the monastery, but other than that, they didn't really have a lot of information from the outside. So yeah, and then no electricity, no toilets even. You know, yeah, very, it's survival out there, right? It's full on survival.
Yeah.
And so you grow an appreciation for these people because they've been living that way and sustaining themselves for hundreds of years like that. And it kind of brought up all these interesting questions because we were in that place. You can definitely feel the, not having the modern world there with you, not having your cell phone, not having access to all the email, internet, social media, all of that, boom, that's all gone. So it's just you being present with those people in that village and connecting with them and eating with them and staying in their homes. And it was just one of the most beautiful experiences of my life.
So let's bring forward now the mountain that I saw a picture of, and this thing looked to me like the Matterhorn or something very steep, like a big, massive triangle, right? That goes, it's a cone, right? That goes
For sure. Yeah.
with a point. And
Yeah.
okay. So tell me more about, so did you, one of the things comment that you said you knew you wanted to climb it. You didn't know it had been climbed before. You didn't know if it had a name, but tell me, pick it up from there. Like what happened?
Yeah, so we spent 2 days doing reconnaissance, trying to find this mountain, and I was with two Sherpa guides. Part of the time, they thought that we were trespassing into Tibet because we were going into these obscure valleys, and just saw some of the most amazing things. These herds of Baral, which are these Himalayan mountain sheep. Hundreds of them coming down the hillside, things like that. The glaciers, just these massive canyons of glaciers are just unreal. We came into contact with snow leopard tracks and things like that. So, and it was just the three of us out there. It felt like we were suspended in time, and the whole world was kind of oblivious to our existence. And finally, we found this pyramid mountain, and it was more glorious. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I've climbed the Matterhorn, and I don't know if I have this infatuation with pyramid mountains, or pyramid looking shaped mountains, but anyway, there it was. And so we started making plans to climb this. And as we were making those plans, and as we were making our way closer to the mountain, the more things started falling apart. We were caught in a snowstorm at 17,000 feet. We were, my gear bags with my climbing gear, the mule that was carrying it took off, and it was 2 days behind us. And, so all these things started unraveling, and it forced me to hunker down in this remote outpost, the most remote outpost village in this valley, which is the village of Phu.
And how many
And
people? What was the population there?
at that time, yeah, it was about I think three to 400 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty, not that big, and there, I was hunkering down, and I got to know some of the locals. We started, connecting with them. I started connecting with this one young man in particular named Sonam Dorje, and Sonam Dorje, he had left Phu when he was 14 years old. His only chance of getting an education outside of what he would learn in the village was to leave the village, and so he traveled all the way down to India. And he had just come back to his village after 7 years. 7 years he hadn't seen his village or his family, and our paths happened to cross at that exact moment. And so Sonam Dorje and I, we would go on these daily walks, and he would kind of explain to me about the culture and the people and the village, and the challenges of the village, and how anyone with money will leave, and he felt the village culture was changing very quickly, and people who would leave and come back, he said their minds would change, and so all these thoughts were kind of going around, and he took us to this monastery, this hilltop monastery one day, and just we had this very profound conversation about this idea of karma, cause and effect, and choices, and we're presented with different moments throughout our lives, and how do we decide to act on one moment versus another, right? And so we got into these very deep conversations around that. And it just had me thinking that, it had me questioning why am I here? Like, why am I here in the Himalaya right now? And what am I here to do? And I went through this full-blown identity crisis because I couldn't climb the mountain. And, if you imagine my mindset at that time, I had wanted to come there since I was a teenager, since I was 15, and I found the mountain of my dreams. And there it was, so tantalizingly in front of me. And then I get shut down right on the doorstep. My dreams were crushed. And so all of this was going through my mind. I was, had this Jekyll and Hyde like conversation with myself. And fortunately, Chantal and our other teammates were very patient and were kind of listening to me going through all this. But kind of came to this, conclusion that I have to choose to trust in this unfolding of events. Everything inside of me wanted to climb the mountain, but everything outside of me was kind of guiding me in a different direction. And I didn't know where, but I just knew that it was almost like everything outside of me, those things that were happening were stronger than my will. And I had to sort of, rather than sort of forcing myself forward, I listened to that and sort of, chose to trust in whatever that unfolding of events was. I had no idea where it was leading me at that time.
So how does this then, like, if you come to that decision that you're just going to live in the moment, right? And that whatever's going to be is going to be, was there a timetable that you said, okay, I'm here on this date, okay, but on 10 days from now, I have to be back on a plane, right? I mean, was there a finite thing that, even though you're saying that and you don't have access to internet, and I've been in those situations where, you're just, it is what it is. You're just going about your business and what happens. These have all been on mountains, of course, without internet coverage. But there's also the back end of this, like, on this date, I know I'm going here. It's not open-ended. Like, what did that mean for you?
Yeah, so had I climbed the mountain, I know we would have bypassed this other little village of Nar, or at least I would have, because I probably would have split off from the team. I knew I had to be back in Kathmandu to catch exactly that plane back at a certain time. So we definitely didn't have copious amounts of time here. It definitely was a strict timeline, and I can talk about it now looking back, so it's easier. But at the time, I mean, even though I chose to trust in this unfolding of events, it was still a struggle. Like, every step away from the mountain was agonizingly painful, a step away from my dream, right? In fact, it was so, we encountered this one cave up on the cliffside. It was high up there in the cliff face. And I was so frustrated. I guess I had all this pent up energy. I just threw my bag to the ground and I just went up, I climbed the free solo, the cliff face, and climbed into this cave, which was quite a frightening climb because I didn't have any equipment with me and no ropes or anything. But got into the cave, and it turned out that I'd stumbled onto a 2,200-year-old tomb with hundreds of human bones in it, and that's a whole nother story. But the thing is that, yeah, I mean, I often look back on it and I think about this concept of success versus depth, because we can have an intention. An intention, I think, is different than a goal. A goal is very sort of fixed in place. You know, it's kind of a one moment in time thing, but an intention is, you can adapt with it. And so what I've realized through this journey is that, you know, focusing more on the depth of something, of an experience, versus the success of it is far more changing. That's where we become who we are. That's where we're not defined, I don't think, by a one single point in time. You know, we are successful here, we get the trophy. I don't think that's what defines us. I think what defines us is who do we become, you know, in getting there. And that's really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about depth. So I started thinking about these things and saying, okay, well, maybe I didn't climb the mountain, but maybe there's a deeper meaning to this whole journey. And even though that didn't really unfold itself immediately, that's kind of what was present in my mind. It was still frustrating because, you know, your mind is always going and racing and, like, you know, unsure, but the strength of trust, I had to be focused on practicing that.
So let's play that forward and let's enter into the picture this little girl.
Right. Yeah. So then we're in this little village called Nar, and again, that's the place that I probably would not have gone had I climbed the mountain.
Yep.
And you know, I was there. We discovered that there was this little stone school, and everywhere that we had been in the valley, there were no schools. The kids were literally running around. I heard the stories from Sonam Dorje about the importance of education and how far kids have to leave, you know, in order to get that education. I learned many things about, you know, the ways of the village life. I mean, kids, by the time they're 6 or 7 years old, they have to start working in the fields. You know, at that time, the girls as young as like 14, 15 years old, they get married, start having families, kids of their own. So again, you know, all these thoughts were floating around in my mind. So then when I discovered that Nar, the village, has this little school, I thought, let's go check it out. Let's go see what's there and what they're doing. Maybe there's some hope for these kids here in Nar. And so the school, it's this little stone building. It only scratches the surface of grade 1. But when we got there, this little 7-year-old girl was teaching English numbers to this group of kids aged 3 to 7. And I just thought, what is going on here? Like, this is very interesting. You know, English numbers, the English script differs from the Nepali script. So why is she teaching English numbers to this group of kids? And, you know, her herself being 7, and the kids, you know, you imagine them, they're in these raggedy clothes, threads unwinding at the sleeves, that sort of thing, very sunburnt to the point where a lot of them had blisters on their faces. They had pulled their benches out into the courtyard of the school because in the classrooms, there's no electricity. So it's too dark in there. So at least in the courtyard, they could be in the light and the warmth of the sun. So there they were. And Chantal and I and our team members, we were taken in this scene, and it was just magical, Mark. Honestly, it was just, you had to imagine these 7,000 meter Himalayan peaks there, and then these little kids, you know, doing their thing. And, you know, we had seen hundreds of kids in our entire time in the Himalaya, but there was something markedly different about this little girl teaching the class. I don't know quite what it was, but I felt this strange, almost karmic connection with her. And so it wasn't long before we found the teacher. He was kind of looming in the background, and he explained to us, he comes from a totally different part of Nepal. He had been assigned there, and he kind of gave us the indication that he felt like he'd been banished to the end of the earth. So he didn't really have any desire to teach. And so the kids, though, they caught wind of this guitar that was slung over our team member's shoulder, and they'd never seen a guitar before, you know, let alone heard one. And so Michael, our musician, he's quite the entertainer. And so the teacher said, okay, well, you know, why don't you take up some time here and you can teach them a song and teach them some music. And so Michael was up there. He taught them this jazzed up version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and they were all getting into it and dancing and singing. And then the teacher, I guess he got a little bit motivated. So he brought out this Nepali drum and starts playing this drum. And he wants the kids to dance one at a time in front of us. And he starts with this little girl who was teaching the English numbers. And he basically said, you know, you dance now in front of these people. And it was just very strange and awkward. And she was there. You could see her kind of internally starting to cry. She looked like a petrified animal, didn't know what to do. So Chantal, my wife, she just, she couldn't take it, and she just marched up there beside the little girl, and started her best impression of this Nepali dance, waving her arms around, and she didn't know what she was doing, but the little girl, forgot about everybody watching, and started trying to imitate Chantal's improvised moves, and the two of them were there, just there dancing together, like these two spirits, kind of in their own world, and it was that moment that I kind of started thinking that maybe this is the reason why I'm not climbing the mountain. And then afterwards, they found where we were staying after they got out of school. This little girl, she ran, like bolted, that would have left me totally winded, that elevation. And she just, leaped into Chantal's arms, just gave her the biggest heart-to-heart hug. And then she turned to me, and she leaped into my arms. And I'll never forget that moment. Her hands, like her little hands, just kind of grabbing the back of my neck, and I could feel her heartbeat. And I just, sorry, I just got a little emotional for a second. But I remember in that moment that this is what I'm here to do. And then we started asking these questions. We asked her name, and she said her name is Karma. And we asked, and this is through Nepali, we asked her how old she said she is. She said 7. And then her friends kind of rushed up, and they were asking us for chocolate and candy, because they're more used to that there now with the trekkers coming in. But when they found out we didn't have any, she came back, and she brought out this little card with English words on it. And all she wanted us to do, she motioned to Chantal, can you read the English names? She just wanted to learn English. She didn't want, again, imagine these, they don't have anything, very little out there. She didn't want any chocolate. All she wanted to do was to learn.
Did she have parents?
Yeah, so that was our next step. So we started asking everybody we could, what happens in this village for kids who want education beyond the village education. And we said, can we meet the parents? We want to know kind of what the parents have planned for her. And so we were able to find their home, and we met, had a meeting with with her mom. Her dad was out herding yaks. He was two days away, so he couldn't be there, but the mom was there. And she actually, before she even came, Karma brought us to her home, this little stone home with a dung fueled stove in the middle of the room. Karma brought us in by the hand, and she put these mats out for us to sit on. She got the stove, the fire ready. She put the kettle on, all while looking after her 3-year-old sister. And I was just thinking, this doesn't happen in in North America. And then her mom finally came, and her mom, just a beautiful, like very graceful woman. Very weathered, very hard, from the elements, but just very graceful. And she, she had probably worked, 12 hours in the field, and came back, and the first thing she did was start making us tea and these little yak milk crackers. And so, we had this conversation all through broken translation, but we discovered that education was or is the biggest blessing that they could ever hope for and ask for their daughters in particularly. And they had 6 daughters in the family. Karma and Pemba are the youngest 2, and they didn't have a plan for, Pemba was only 3 years old at that time, but they didn't have a plan for them. And so I said, for as long as, and we asked Karma, we said, Karma, would you like to study? Is this something you would like? And she said, yes, absolutely. And so we said, okay, well, for as long as you would like to study, we will help out with that. And we can work with your parents to try and find the best school for you. And we knew it would have to be a boarding school. That's what we were told, because that's just where they have to go. They have to leave the village. But we also knew that it had to be a safe environment. And we knew that it had to be aligned with her Tibetan culture, because in the mountains, they're actually more Tibetan. And most of Nepal is sort of Hindu. So we knew that, in Nepali, the Nepalis, they operate on the caste system. So the people in the mountains are actually considered indigenous. So if we put her in any government school, there would be huge racial discrimination against her. So we knew that we had to find a culturally aligned school for her. So we searched Kathmandu when we got back and couldn't find anything. Came back to Canada, kept searched for about a month, and we still couldn't find anything. Chantal and I were just starting to lose a bit of hope. And one day, Google kind of came to the rescue, and up pops this school called SMD School, Sri Mangal Dip School. school for Himalayan children. And on the front page, it had kids like Karma and Pemba, the kids of these villages. And it said, education for the lost children of the Himalaya. Because these kids are just in so far out pockets that they just get forgotten about. So, and so we thought, oh, this is great. And we researched it. Who founded this school? Well, it was founded by this Tibetan Lama who fled Tibet in the 50s. And he's this very high ranking, Lama. And he founded the school specifically for these kids. To preserve, not only for them to get the education, but to preserve the culture and the teachings of their Dharma and their Buddhist ethnicity, Tibetan Buddhist culture. So we wrote the school at once. We said, we have a perfect little student for you. And they wrote back, the school director, she said, thank you, beautiful story. I'm sure she's great. But the thing is that we have 500 kids at this school. We're busting at the seams. We have 400 kids on the wait list. We have kids being dropped off on the stairs that we have to turn away. And because of all this, there's only one person who can admit new kids into this school. And that is this 80-plus-year-old founder, this Lama. And I remember reading her email. I just figured, it felt like I was being dropped down this black hole. Like, why are there so many barriers stacked against this one little girl who just wants to learn? But Chantal had put our address in her email signature. And so the school director, she said, well, I see that you're in Vancouver, Canada. You may be interested to know that this founder, this 80-year-old Lama, happens to be recovering from an illness right now at his monastery in Richmond, which was like a 25-minute drive from our house at that time. I just thought,
so in the car you went.
Yeah. So we, we were able to visit. He wasn't seeing anybody, but we were able to see him and told him the story kind of like this. And then he said, Karma can be admitted now into the school. So now that, how do you actually communicate? If you're talking to somebody who's in a 17th century village, they've got no internet, no phone, no this and that. Like, how do you get that message to that? That's a great. So we had to, one of our Sherpa friends, we had to send him up with a letter because we still had to get the parents' consent, and obviously Karma would have to go down boarding school, so she would have to leave her village. So he had to take a full bus ride and then hike for 5 days to deliver a letter and then reverse it on the way back. and I mean, her parents were thrilled and they were very happy about it, and they totally agreed that this was the right thing. And so that was back in 2012, and then over the next 8 years, we've been going back to Nepal every 8 to 10 months and growing our relationship with Karma, and then her sister, little Pemba, who was able to get into the school as well. And their family, we'd go on family trips together, and just kind of, just having these beautiful moments and beautiful experiences, and growing our this family connection together. And it's just been the most beautiful thing.
So that's amazing. That's a great story. So in essence, you went there, you were moved, and you really got into the power of now. And you were able to connect, you and your wife were able to connect with this little girl. And this all came from a fallout of not being able to climb this particular mountain that you really wanted to climb, but circumstances dictated that you had to retreat to this town where all this stuff went down. So in terms of like the path forward, is there a foundation or something, like in terms of you're funding these little girls, I don't know how many, but these little girls to go to this school in Kathmandu so they can have education. Otherwise, they're kind of screwed for the rest of their life. So you're trying to do your part in the world, and you keep going back. Is there a bigger play to all this in terms of trying to get every kid educated or something?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so right now, Chantal and I, obviously we have the connection with Karma and Pemba, and then their sister Palma is the next older sister for Karma. We were able to take care of her as well with the education. And then we have 2 more girls that we're supporting who actually got scholarships to come to Canada. And one's doing her pre-med now at Trent University. So that's kind of our focus, but the larger focus than that is the school, the SMD school. Their website is himalayanchildren.org. Sri Mangal Dip School, 500 kids. And we've supported them through awareness campaigns, through special projects. After the 2015 earthquakes, much of the school was damaged, so we helped fundraise for that. So part of the idea about this book is, I've been sharing parts of this story over the years with people from all different walks of life, and no matter who's sitting on the other side of the table, there's always this kind of deep emotional connection and this yearning for more. So part of the reason writing the book was I'd like to share this story with people, so that hopefully they can experience some of that same level of heart connection that I experienced through the pages. But also, I'm hoping that they can learn more about what happens in these Himalayan villages, and the idea behind the Sri Mangal School providing education for these kids. So that's really, if there's an objective to share a story, but also beyond that is to raise awareness for this school, this good work that the school is doing, and raise awareness about these children and these kids in these villages, who could stand to benefit. I mean, when they get educated, not only does it benefit them, but it benefits their entire village, their entire
Yeah.
community.
Totally get
So
that. And what has the relation turning this whole thing around? This little girl, and we start with Karma. I mean, this is now some years later, so she's matured, and so she can intellectually appreciate what you guys actually did for her to make this happen. Do you guys feel that, like, when you see her, you and your wife, does that like jump off the page, in terms of her appreciation, or is she like, where does she sit in that, all that?
yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think she, both her and Pemba, we've grown very close to, and they actually came to Canada in 2018. We met with their parents and had a conversation about, the possibility of doing a cultural exchange, and just to see again more of the world. They saw their village, they saw Kathmandu, but what about the rest of the world? And again, if I go back to 2012 in their home, I mean, part of the thought that I had at that time was, I just I just want to help give these little girls the same choices that many kids in North America would have. So, they should see what's out there in their world, and then maybe they can dream bigger. So we definitely see that. It's too early yet in terms of where they might go, but Karma and Pemba, when they were here, I mean, it was just some of the most mind-blowing experiences. I mean, seeing their minds grow. And then, Chantal and I, we became kind of parents overnight. For a year they were here, and our minds grew tremendously. We learned a lot from them. They learned a lot from being here. So I think, I don't know where they'll decide to be, but I know that they'll be able to make a much more informed choice. Right now, they're back in their village because the school in Nepal or in Kathmandu had to close down because of COVID,
Yeah.
for now. So they're back in their village. So now they're seeing their whole village way with a different lens. And now they have internet, they have communication, and they just got internet in the village. So I can communicate with them, have Skype calls, and the kind of questions that we're asking and that they're asking, and the lenses that they're looking at things with. I mean, why are things the way they are in their village versus here versus Kathmandu, and being able to kind of contrast those things, I think is very important. So again, I don't want to sort of set any expectations in terms of where they should be, but I just want them to know that they have the choice of where they would like to be, where they would like to kind of build their future, and then Chantal and I will support them with whatever that they choose.
Yeah, no, that it's just great. And the reason why it's great is because what you're doing is you're paying it forward. And it's you gave them a gift, but they also gave you a gift in a big time way, right? For really understanding and appreciating the moment and what you've done to affect their lives, other lives. And like you said it perfectly, which is, it's really a trickle down effect with the village, because the more they're in the economy and Nepal and everything else, and that's just the way the world works. But you got to have a break, you got to have a chance. And it's just amazing that of all places you decided to go is Nepal, and of all places you were inspired by this picture, which led to this village, which led to this little girl, which was led to other kids to benefit. My daughter, we mentioned at the outset of this show that she has epilepsy, and so I've been involved in a couple of campaigns. I started one called the Millions Everest, which we did last year, and we raised 30 grand then, and another 30, for Millions Everest, the Low Challenge. and my daughter, you know, I'll do anything for her, but it's all these other people that's affecting. Since it's out in the public eye, people are seeing this and they're being inspired to do certain things. My daughter's feeling a lift and more empowerment, just like I'm sure this little girl Karma and Pemba have been. And then, you know, just what it does for you, like you feel like you're actually doing something that matters versus just punching the clock and doing something crazy. Right. So let me ask you this. Where can people find this book, A Story of Karma, Finding Love and Truth in the Lost Valley of the Himalaya?
Yeah, so it's pretty much available where books are sold. It's available, of course, on Amazon. Yeah, it should be available through Barnes and Noble. Again, if your local independence bookstore doesn't happen to have it, they could definitely order it. But yeah, it's available through all the major channels. If people want to learn more about it, they can visit my website, which is just my name, Michael Schauch, so SCHAUCH.com, and then they can see more information about the book, and I've got a little book trailer there, and you know, so things like that. But yeah, it's definitely available through the bookstores.
Listen, awesome story, very inspirational. I love when people, especially we're shooting this today. It's in the middle of December, and this will come out in a couple of weeks. But it is the season of giving and really being reflective. And you've, you know, certainly done that for me, and I'm sure you're going to do that for others. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure being here.
All right, there he is, the one and only Michael Schauch. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Whoa.